Hey everyone, I'm Lori Kirkstead, and this is the Imposter's Guide to Authentic Leadership, a podcast for new leaders who are ready to stop depending on external approval and start trusting themselves. This series is based on my book of the same name, so if anything you hear speaks to you and you want to go a little deeper, that's the next place you should go for more context and to do all the leadership activity prompts. So who is this book for? Well, this book is for people who got promoted because they were great at their jobs and then realized that leadership felt less like an accomplishment and more like starting over. For a lot of high-achieving people, like myself included, we succeeded not only because we were good at our jobs, but we always went above and beyond. We made sure everyone around us was okay. We didn't rock the boat, and we never, ever wanted to be the reason why anything went wrong. And for a long time, that worked really well. Until it didn't. The problem is that those same instincts become a liability the moment that you're in charge. When you are responsible for other people, you can't keep everyone happy and make the right call at the same time. You can't lead from the outside in, waiting on approval that may never come and expecting to build a team that trusts you when you don't even trust yourself. All right, so let's actually get into the story of episode 1. This is going to be the origin story. Fair warning, this one involves a surprise layoff, an emotional spiral, and me dropping the F-bomb on an HR call. So adjust your earbuds accordingly. All right, so 8.5 years was how long I was at this last company. I was recruited to build a content marketing function from scratch, and I did, and I was really proud of it. There were 5 managers, a whole ecosystem of freelancers and consultants, and systems like the content advisory board that actually worked. It was my department, my team, and if I'm being really honest, a pretty significant chunk of how I understood myself as a person, even though I don't like to admit that. So when it ended, it really didn't feel like I was just losing my job. It felt like I was losing a part of me. And again, I hate admitting that because I knew it was just a job. Well, the day that it happened, started off completely normal. The kids were at preschool. I had my second or maybe third iced coffee of the day. Probably not great, but that's what I did. My laptop was open. The usual Slack chaos was happening. And then a calendar invite appeared from my boss's boss with the subject line, catch up. Normally that would set off red flags, but we were a remote organization. We had skip levels. She and I were super friendly. So I messaged her, kind of stupidly, to ask if I needed to prep anything. She said no, so I put my headphones back in, and it was business as usual. But something in my body was already doing the math. My brain said everything was fine, but my nervous system had a very different read on the situation. So at noon, I joined the call, my sweaty palms and my big smile, and I said, "Hey, how you doing?" And she didn't smile back. She wouldn't even look at the camera. And then a surprise HR guest joined, and I knew exactly what was about to go down. All the words kind of floated by before I could even process them. The only thing that actually landed was that this was going to be my last day. 8.5 years. When they finished their script and they asked if I had any questions, I just sat there for a second with my jaw so tightly clenched and my chest just absolutely on fire. So I eventually said, yeah, are you serious? After 8.5 years? That's real shitty. Real fucking shitty. I couldn't even believe the words were coming out of my mouth. Definitely not my most professional moment, but I don't even care. It was an honest one, and I guess a very Bostonian one as well. So I did what every corporate person does after they get laid off. I wrote a LinkedIn post, the grateful for the journey, excited for what's next, but I was not excited for what was next. I was scared, and I was furious, actually, more than scared. But the messages that started coming in, they really didn't mention the campaigns or the pipeline numbers or any of the actual work, because that would obviously be kind of weird if they did. But what people remembered was how I made them feel. The humor when things got stressful, the sense that they could show up as them full selves. They didn't have to perform around me. that was such a shock to me because in the last few years of that job, I had been told that those exact same things were problems. I was too loud, too emotional, too direct, too personal, too everything. But those were the things that my team said made them feel safe when things were crazy. And I was being actively coached to sand those down. Nobody ever really said, "Stop being yourself, Lori," but they made it very clear that who I was needed some editing, let's just say. So when I launched my consultancy and the work came in fast, what surprised me wasn't actually the business. It was the quiet that I had experienced for the first time in years. It's like without the title and the team and the constant low-grade noise of being needed, I was just sitting alone with questions that I had kind of been outrunning for years. Things like, who am I when I'm not managing everyone else's comfort? What do I actually want? I didn't have great answers, and that didn't feel very good. It was uncomfortable, but in a way I wasn't prepared for. So that's when I found Dr. Bill George in his framework on authentic leadership, and that's the 5 dimensions of purpose, values, heart, relationships, and self-discipline. Now for me, this was the first time I'd had any real language for what I'd been bumping into my entire career. I just hadn't been able to name it. I knew what I felt, but I just didn't know how to talk about it. I found that most leadership advice is written for people who already feel ready, which doesn't even make a lot of sense to me. But a lot of people who struggle with imposter syndrome, they didn't build their success on confidence. They built it on adaptation, and that's the difference. I know it was for me. You get very good at reading the room and anticipating people's needs, keeping things smooth, all of that. You become the person that everyone can count on. And that's a genuinely great quality until the moment it starts costing you more than it's giving back. This is all about balance here. So from the outside, it looks like, you're super easygoing, easy to work with, and you probably are. But what it takes from you over time is your own voice, your own limits, and eventually your own sense of what you actually think. Leadership asks you to stop managing everyone else's comfort and to really start trusting your own judgment. And if you spent most of your career perfecting the art of adaptation, that ask is so much bigger than it sounds. I found that nobody was writing about that gap, so I figured I'd write the book that I needed. Before the next episode, here's something that I want you to think about. Think about the last time somebody praised you at work. What did they actually thank you for? Really think about it, because I bet it's not what you think makes you valuable. And that gap is exactly where this whole thing starts. Did they say, "Thank you for getting that done so quickly," or did they actually look at the quality of work and the value you brought? Okay, that's it for the first episode of the Imposter's Guide to Authentic Leadership podcast. So this podcast is a peek at the book, which has the full framework by Dr. Bill George and all the exercises that go along with it. You can find more information about where to buy it in the show notes, and if you know a new leader who needs to hear this, please send it their way. It really does a lot to help get the word out. All right, that's it for episode 1. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next episode.